the narratives with LSU this year in this football season has been slow starts. The Tigers just have been, for whatever reason, very, very poor in the first quarter, have gotten behind in most games. The stats are a little bit skewed when you look at them just as a whole because they beat Southern so bad in the first quarter. I believe it was 34-0, that kind of torpedoes the entire season worth. But we understand what has happened. So I went back and looked at all of them and went, okay, why? What is happening, and what can we talk about, and what improvements can be made? So I'll get your thoughts. You were watching just like I was. I'll kind of lay out what happened. And I've got a kind of a conclusion at the end here, but we'll see what you think. The Florida State game, we know, did not start great. Florida State was up 7-3 at the half, became 17-3 in the third quarter. Well, let's look at that game. Your opening drive, now it wasn't the most beautiful thing you ever seen, but Jaden Daniels was ripping off big runs, and you got a couple penalties, and you got down inside the 10-yard line. In fact, you had second and goal from the 5, and you snapped it over the quarterback's head. Well, that leads you to a field goal. In the second quarter, you drove down and got a 36-yard field goal attempt. It got blocked. But it's a 36-yard attempt. That means you got inside the red zone. The offense moved the ball in the first half a little bit, but you only got 3 points. And Florida State's only first-half touchdown was the flea flicker, which was well executed, but it's not like you got it rammed down your throat. They threw a flea flicker and hit you on it. So that one, the guy's not playing center anymore. That snapped it over the quarterback's head, and it wasn't really that bad. You think you've cleaned up a little bit with the field goal unit. The score was bad. It looked bad because I don't think you executed very well offensively, but this is a different team than it was that day. So from that one, I'm like, I'm not too concerned with the Florida State game. Your thoughts on that as I get to the next one?
Yeah, that Florida State game was just it was not one that you can be very proud of, and like you said, a lot of revolving doors with that offensive line. We love our very own, Louisiana's own Cam Wire, but I think Emory's just a lot better at the right tackle position, and you kind of saw the way that D-line kind of got after that offensive line in that game, and I think obviously the special teams having Malik at punt return, not the greatest day for Malik back there, gave them some short fields with that, and then the special teams, the kicking unit, was just not very good either. And I think all those things have just become so much worldly better at, since that first game to now to this point in the season. So you would hope that you kind of don't have those kind of ugly things kind of rear their ugly head in this Alabama game.
So Mississippi State, you got down 13-7 at half. Here was your start in that game. You took the football and you punted. You went 7 plays and ended up punting the football. Mississippi State got on their first drive, went right down the field, 9 plays, 87 yards, got a touchdown on the running play on a missed tackle where you had it fit correctly. You just missed the tackle. State didn't score again on its next 4 drives. So the defense after that, which wasn't a busted assignment, it was just a missed tackle, the defense did its job over the next 4 drives. The offense didn't do squat until finally the last drive of the half. Jaden Daniels kind of took control, and then you did a really good job in the second half. But the start was not good offensively. Your execution was poor. You weren't putting points on the board. It wasn't necessarily anything fluky that happened. You just stunk on offense. And the defense, after one mistake, pretty much bowed its neck and did a nice job. So offense was really bad in terms of execution in those first 2 games I'm talking about, Florida State and Mississippi State, even though you did get a nice opening drive against Florida State and then got a field goal block. So we go to Auburn. You fell behind 17-0 in that game. They hit the deep ball on a scramble drill over Sage Ryan's head for a touchdown on their first drive to score. LSU punted on their first 4 drives. Okay, now we have a pattern that's materializing. You're not getting points early in games with this offense. Whether it's snapping the ball over the quarterback's head, where it's just being stagnant, there's no execution, you can't run the football, drops have happened. There's a little bit of a trend there that you're not doing a very good job. Auburn didn't score again after that deep ball until their 4th drive, where they did go 98 yards on 8 plays. They hit 3 big plays on the drive. Your defense basically got cooked on that drive, no question about it. The only thing that changed the tide of that game was Ojulari's strip sack that got you a touchdown. And then right before the half, your offense did kick it into gear. They went 77 yards on 11 plays and made it 17-14 at half. So while it was 17-0, you made it 17-14. Obviously, you took control in the second half and played great on defense as well. But again, you punted on your first 4 drives. So we'll get to what this team looks like right now, but the only pattern I see emerging here is that your offense isn't coming out like we've seen Lane Kiffin do the last 3 weeks and have a plan, have a script, hit it, and score early. That had not happened through your first 3 big games, Florida State and Mississippi State.
Yeah, just not the execution level that you really need to be, an elite offense. And I think especially that Florida State game, that Mississippi State game, early on in those games, you really weren't able to get your run game going, and that's just something you were really, really able to do in the latter half of the season. And obviously, you saw that huge leap from JD5 as a passer. Obviously, before that Florida game, you're throwing the ball for 6 yards, barely 6 yards a clip. Really not the level that you want to see. Now you kind of look at these last two performances, he's well over 8 yards, a completion attempt. So I think, you maximum put those two factors together, you're getting more chunk plays, you're obviously being more efficient in the pass game, and it's obviously letting you get way down the field and get in situations where you can punch the ball into the end zone. And that's just something that you really, really didn't see, early on in the season, especially early on in these games that we kind of know, the second half team they've become. But, you got to get more of that in the first half. And I think they've kind of figured that out over these last 2 weeks.
And we'll certainly get to, because that's essentially where it's headed. But there's a couple more I want to get to. Certainly Tennessee. You muff the opening kickoff. They row right down the short field and score. You take the football. Once again, your offense on its first possession can't do anything, and you punt. Well, you can't cover the punt, and they run it back inside the 30, and they score again. Boom, boom, boom. The Vols scored 20 points on their first 4 drives. But LSU did move the football in the first half of the Tennessee game. They had 212 yards in the first half, but they got stopped on 4th down 3 times. And that was, as Brian Kelly said, look, the game was not that bad in the first half. I just went for a lot of 4th downs, and we couldn't get a yard. And that's right. They couldn't get 2 4th and 1s. Then they went for 1. It's a little much. It was 4th and, I think, 11. And it's the one you didn't get. They got a sack, and then they got the 2 plays and got the field goal right before the half. But everything broke Tennessee's way, and they played much better, and you just got way behind in that game. If they played it again, I don't think it would be 20-0 immediately. But they're not going to play it again unless it happens in Atlanta. So, again, your offense did move the ball in that game, but Tennessee made the plays they had to and stopped you from moving the chains and getting any points. So, that one a little bit different. Florida, they hit you with the deep ball over Jarek Bernard Converse on the second play of their offensive game for a huge touchdown. Florida's second drive went 75 yards. And all 75 were on the ground, and they were up 14-7. But totally unlike the other games prior, where your offense couldn't get it into gear and get points on the board, you scored on your first 6 drives. Touchdowns, in fact, in this game. So totally different, and you took control after Florida punched you in the mouth, and as Matt House has done, you made an adjustment, played some better defense, and allowed your team to separate there in the third quarter. So that one, you got down 14-7, another quote-unquote slow start, but it wasn't like the other ones because your offense was dialed from the start.
Yeah, it is. And I think game flow is so important in a lot of these football games, especially when you have an offense that's putting so much pressure, on the other opposing offense. And you kind of saw that Florida offense really kind of fizzle out in that second half because the offense put so much pressure on them to score again. And I think for this LSU defense, once you kind of take a team's, running attack out of it, you're down a couple scores, you got to pass it every play. It kind of lets this defensive line, which is as advertised, really pin their ears back and get after the passer. Then it obviously opens up the world for my man Percules, my boy Perk 40, coming in there, rushing after the passer and doing all the things that way. And it's just really, really hard. And then what you've seen these past 2 weeks is, to pass the ball time and time again and get your team back into the game. And so if this LSU offense is going to be one of those offenses where they can be efficient, score early on in the game, kind of take control of it, control the flow of it, still mix their run game in and not have to pass it every time, it really creates that Matt House defense situation where they can get exotic, get after the passer, and really open up that avenue to really take charge in a football game. So it's really on the offense when you've seen them kind of have that success, especially in the second half of these games. It puts so much pressure on these opposing offenses to really try to score every drive, and that's really, really difficult to do with all the athletes they have on that defensive line.
So your offense really didn't get off the bus against Florida State, Mississippi State, or Auburn. You did a really poor job. So there's a trend there. Well, against Tennessee, you did move the ball, and you could have taken points on 2 different occasions, and you didn't. And so you didn't score, and you were down 20-0, but the offense did move the football, and your coach wanted to go for it. So not necessarily the same trend you saw early in the season. And then in the Florida game, you got down 14-7, but the offense had figured it out, and they were great in that game offensively. And then you look at the Ole Miss game. You say, well, you got down 17-3, another terrible start. And if you listen to this show, you heard me go on, I said it on the postgame show, I said it on the Monday after on this show, and it sounds a little bit homerish, but I'm not asking for everything to break LSU's way. But I'm telling you, in that game, you underthrow a wide open touchdown to Brian Thomas. You overthrow a wide open touchdown to Kayshon Boutte. You throw a touchdown to Jeray Jenkins, and he's a foot out of the back of the end zone. Then you miss a 42-yard field goal. You have the interception, and you drop it. Then you have another interception, but it gets called back for pass interference. Yeah. And after all that had happened, you were down 17-3. I'm just asking for one of those to change, and it doesn't quite look nearly as bad. So once again, the offense did move the ball. You had 3 chances to score a touchdown and didn't execute on those 3 plays by inches or a foot. And then you have 2 interceptions that you don't capitalize on because you dropped one and you got one called back for pass interference. So it feels like they've improved on the bad starts that truly were bad offensively against Florida State and Mississippi State. And the offense has done a better job early in games. And the defense, we know, has been pretty good the entire way. They've given up a couple big plays early, and they've been awesome late. So while it's a huge concern of mine that they never get off to a good start, I'm not sitting here saying, man, they're so out-schemed and out-coached, they just have no idea what they're doing until halftime. I don't think it's that dire a situation.
No, not at all. And I think especially kind of just looking at, what they've done these past 2 weeks, it's just been night and day from the level of execution. You see all the players are a lot more confident. They're running the ball just so much better than they were early on in the season. And it's a game of vintage. And you kind of saw that on full display in that Ole Miss game where it's just something just breaks a little bit in your favor. Obviously, that game could have got out of hand a lot more sooner than it did, and it would have put a lot more pressure on Dart to kind of do what he was forced to do in the second half a lot more sooner. And who knows what the score would have been, especially when you go 42-3 on an opponent. So I think for this LSU team, their confidence is at an all-time high right now. The receivers are in rhythm; they feel comfortable about running the ball, and I think it all starts with JD5, just the level of play that he's at. I saw the stat line, his numbers next to Bryce Young's number. I know Bryce missed some time this season, but they're better in a lot of categories. So I think for LSU, you're going to come out on that field just feeling like, we're going to execute early on. And if you can kind of put that pressure on Alabama early and keep that crowd into the game, who knows what's going to happen by the fourth quarter.
Got to get off to a good start. You just don't want to play from behind against Alabama. It's just not a very comfortable place to be. Arkansas did it and almost came out on the other end of it, and then Alabama ran away from them late. But it's just not a place you want to be in.
Thanks so much for watching Hunt and Hill on YouTube.
Now do us a favor. Hit the red subscribe button below and throw us a like. We'll see you next time.